Hey, welcome to Brunch with Brian. And today we're talking about it's Landlord Week. And so we talked a little bit about landlording, being a landlord, approaching landlords yesterday, and trying to talk to 5 to 10 landlords this week or maybe on any given day here, and seeing what you can generate in terms of good landlord leads. So I want you guys to try to use the landlord opening call. That's a special script that we wrote that has all the lines built in. Now, the cool thing about all the opening calls that you will ever use from us is it's a form and a script built in together. So when you ask the questions, you'll have the space to fill out what the answer is. But I don't want you just filling out I don't ever want you to approach somebody, a landlord or whoever, with just a blank form and you're expected to figure out what to say and how to ask for each of all that information. That's really hard, and it will take you a long time to develop the right things to say when you're even just filling out an opening call script. So that's why you want to follow these opening call scripts. The script is all built right into the form. So the landlord form is one of the best scripts/forms I've ever created, and it's awesome for calling landlords. We talked about that yesterday in terms of saying, hey, Mr. Landlord, you're already renting it. What are you really looking for, Mr. Landlord? This isn't in the script, but what are landlords looking for? They're looking for a regular monthly payment and no hassles. Now, that's exactly what we're offering, fortunately. Now, we're offering generally a little bit less than what they were asking, but in a lot of cases, the surprising thing is sometimes people have properties undervalued in terms of rentals. They got them rented out for $900 a month. They could be getting $1,200 a month. And you'll actually pay them $900 a month, and they'll think, okay, this is good. I'm getting what I kind of wanted out of this property. Now, normally they're going to be taking a little bit less. Remember, you're covering all the taxes and insurance moving forward, and they're generally going to get a little bit less of a spread because you have all the maintenance. Now, remember, do you have the maintenance? And that's what I wanted to talk about today about being a landlord. Are you really a landlord? I mean, if you pursue, it depends on the exit strategy. So when you are a landlord, I want you approaching landlords and trying to buy rental, buy and hold properties from landlords with seller financing. Let's make no mistake about that. That's what we're trying to do. The goal is to get some kind of seller financing or a rent to own. I mean, if the terms are good, we'll do a rent to own. I don't like it as much. You're not in as much of a position of power as a rent to own. Good morning, everybody, by the way. Good morning, Isabel. Good to see you. Lori, hey, good to see you, Lori. Good morning. So yes, and so the landlords, the approach that you make to landlords is with the landlord opening call script, and essentially is, hey, you're already renting it. They're already taking. What's the trick with seller financing? It's sometimes convincing or swaying someone or persuading someone to consider taking monthly payments. They hadn't conceived of that necessarily before. Maybe they weren't thinking about selling their house. They just were thinking cash. And then they have to kind of reconsider their exit strategy. And you have to kind of bring it to them in an appealing way. And then they might reconsider. But some people, landlords, they're already looking for a monthly payment. You don't have to persuade them to take a monthly payment. That's what they're asking for. The question is, will they give up a little bit of that monthly payment and ownership of the property for no hassles and just getting a nice regular monthly payment every month? Some of them will and some of them won't. How many of them do you have to find a month to make a ton of money? One who will. If you find 5 who will in a year, you're doing great. Okay, so that's why I want you to be pursuing this landlord, business. And some of these landlords can be found through realtors. I'm going to talk about that on the next Brunch with Brian. But today I wanted to address the fact that when you are doing buy and hold, are you a realtor? I mean, are you a landlord? Are people going to come to you and say, hey, Mr. Landlord, could you sell me your house on a rent to own? So are you a landlord? How are you doing buy and hold properties, and how will you be doing it in the future? Will you be a landlord? Or, technically, yes, but in operation of the deal, if you sell on a lease purchase, you basically absolve yourself of the two biggest hassles of being a landlord. So what are those? Regular calls for maintenance and the costs, the little niggling costs of maintenance that will eat up your profit. Okay, that's one thing. Just the hassle and cost of maintaining the property. That's one of the problems of being a landlord. And then if you put a tenant in there who's not very good, and they move out in a year, and sometimes they're not good to the property, and so you have to replace a bunch of stuff, maybe do flooring and interior paint, and there goes all any profit you had for that year. So that's the key. How do you avoid that scenario? How do you avoid being a landlord? So the maintenance is one thing. What's the other thing? The other thing is that you're living on skinny margins. That tenant buyer gives you a lot of, or that tenant, remember, they're just a tenant if you're doing a straight rental. If you are a landlord, they are a renter. Now, what we want to be is have a tenant buyer in there. Okay, so that makes us a landlord seller, right? That's what I want you to be thinking of yourself as, a landlord slash seller. Because then that person who's the tenant buyer is going to give you a big non-refundable option deposit, and all of a sudden you're not living on skinny margins anymore. Now you have I want you to try to get at least 10,000 down on any lease purchase. And remember that it's a non-refundable option deposit that they're giving you. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everybody. And when they give you this non-refundable option deposit, I want you to that gives you the cushion that you don't have as a landlord living on skinny margins. And then if an AC unit blows out in one of your properties, that's a big expense. And all of a sudden, you're cash short. And that's the biggest knock on landlords, isn't it? Write this down, guys. Equity rich and cash poor. A lot of landlords find themselves in that spot. Now, if you are in that spot, we actually, Lynette and I've mentioned this on and off throughout the last few months, is that we're doing private lending now. And if you are looking, we're working with a big national company. And if you are looking to refinance a property you currently have as a landlord, if you have some equity, if you find yourself in that spot, equity rich and cash poor, talk to us about doing a refinance. Even if you don't go through us, there are places to go through to get cash out refinances where you can have a cushion if you need it or want it or need it for other investing purposes. Okay, so that's one thing landlords do, is they pull cash out of their properties with cash out refinances. Now, when you are considering whether to sell a property as a landlord seller or just a straight landlord, the one biggest consideration for me is, do I want to hang on to that property? Okay, because there are times, and there are properties that we have. Well, I have one property that I want one of the three kids to eventually move into, because it's really a nice house and it's really close to us. So, it's big. It's like 4,000 plus square feet. And if they have a big family, it'd be a really good house for a family, really nice and close. So I'm kind of hanging on to that house. Now, so if I offered it as a lease purchase, there's a possibility that person that we put in there, the tenant buyer, is going to get their credit repaired or their debt ratio fixed or whatever. Those are the two main things that will keep people from qualifying for a house, is their credit score isn't high enough to qualify for the loan, or the debt ratio is too high. They've got too many monthly payments, and this mortgage payment would be over the percentage allowable by the bank. Okay, so a lot of times you look at different opportunities in different banks, and I used to be in the mortgage business, and we would allow people a certain amount of what they call DTI, debt to income ratio, and like 50%, or and all these different banks use different calculations on that. So if somebody can't qualify because either a debt ratio issue or because of their credit, they're your candidate for a lease purchase tenant buyer. But if you put them in there, there's a chance that they're going to fix that issue, that debt ratio issue or that credit issue, and then go on and buy the house from you. I mean, they have an option, an existing option. Now, if you give them, now I don't want you giving them an option for longer than a year, but again, this avoids you having to be a straight up landlord. I'm not saying there's not some landlord issues, because sometimes these people, even though they like the house and everything and they want it and their intention is to own the house, they end up moving out. So if they end up moving out, then you got some of the management issues of being a landlord, cleaning the property back up, and finding a new tenant buyer, that kind of management stuff. But what's the little bonus plum on that deal is that you keep their whole non-refundable option deposit, and now you go get a new one. So it's basically like you just bought a new house. So it's actually a really, positive thing, not always a happy thing for the buyer, but a lot of times the buyer, the last one, when we had, this lady called us up and sent us a really nice email and said how honored she was to be living in the house and how nice it was for her and her kids, and so sorry she couldn't go forward and buy it, and so people, life goes on, and but if you don't want that house to sell, then you might offer it as a straight rental. So as a straight rental, that's when I want you to be a smart landlord and do a background check and do a credit check and all that. Now, if somebody gives me a $20,000 non-refundable option deposit, I don't really care what their credit score is. I anticipate it's bad. And a lot of times, if I have good sweetheart seller financing, I hope it's horrible. I hope they're in the 400s. All right. So I don't care about the credit, but I'm still doing a background check on anybody we're putting into a house of ours, obviously. Now, I'm going to want a credit score of 620 or above, and you guys can be pickier if you want. But there's other factors too. What kind of job do they have? I'm talking about a renter now, a straight renter. A rent-to-own buyer, again, they're handing me, rent-to-own buyer, lease purchase buyer, they're handing me 20,000. I don't care what their score is, but 620 or above, plus check their, credit, make sure there's no eviction, no foreclosure on there. That's my recommendation. And you can look at their debt ratio. Now that's up to you. You can do employment verification. Now, sometimes you can pay for a background check. A lot of background checks do not do employment verification. So if you're paying 40 or 50 bucks for some background check somewhere, it's probably going to just include a credit check and general background criminal past check. So something like that. But if you do, if you go deeper, I want you to look at their credit for sure if they're going to be just a straight renter. So 620 or above, no evictions or foreclosures, and you got to like their employment history, and that you've got to do that. That's you going further. That's you maybe taking that next step, calling their employer and just saying, I'm calling for an employment verification. Has this person worked here? Basically, all they're going to do is tell you, yes, they work here, and they've been working here for blank number of years. So that's about all they really will tell you, but that's all you're looking for. And then, base that, look at their income, and that will be a big factor when you're a landlord. If I'm just being a landlord, I am looking for, a really more quality individual, not just a big upfront payday. But either way, I'm looking for a quality individual. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of cleaned up credit and kind of more squeaky clean is what I'm looking for in a renter. And so, nobody who's gone through a real rough patch. All right, so it's Landlord Week. There was a lot of explanation, a lot of great training on landlord versus. I never actually phrased it that way, because when you have a tenant buyer, then of course you're a landlord seller. So again, that's interesting to think about it that way. So when you approach any deal, do you want to offer it as a landlord seller to a tenant buyer, get that big non-refundable option deposit and turn over all the maintenance to your tenant buyer? Or do you want to be a straight landlord and get as quality a renter as you can get in there? And the one big question we ask a renter, what's the most important qualifying question for a tenant buyer? What's the most you can put down on your beautiful new home? Question number 3 out of 5. What's the most important question you can ask a renter? How long are you planning to stay? It's question 3 out of 5. Most important question, how long are you planning to stay? I don't want to have someone in and out of there in a year or two. If I'm putting a renter in there, I'm hoping for somebody looking for a long-term rental. 5 or 10 years or something like that. So equity rich, cash poor, that's what we talk about with the landlords, as Lori says. And a lot of good comments, guys. Screenthetenant.com. That is a good source for a background check. They charge $50. And I know him. I know actually Paul, and he's a pretty good guy. And okay, Roger, contact the office. Call 888-RICH now. Okay. Hey, guys. So great to see all of you guys on today. And remember, I try to keep this consistent. Some days I have to do it at an hour earlier or an hour later. So I really appreciate you guys giving me some rhythm and finding us here and tuning in. I love giving you guys great information. Now, on Tuesdays, what happens on Tuesdays? Wow, have I gone long today? What happens on Tuesdays? Teaching Tuesdays. So we're going to talk more about this, being a landlord, and even get into it deeper. And this will be an amazing session today. And I want you to be considering, what's your exit strategy? What's the best way to be a landlord or a landlord/seller? So we'll really get into that. What's our affirmation for today is, I am a happy landlord. Okay. Usually you hear that disgruntled landlord. Well, I'm a happy landlord because I'm going to teach you guys to do it right today. Okay. I'm a happy landlord. 3 times on 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm a happy landlord. I'm a happy landlord. I'm a happy landlord. Yeah. I am a happy landlord. We got a lot of properties that we make a lot of money on. Actually, I have never said those words before. And that's a good one. I like that affirmation. I'm a happy landlord. So that's a good one. Let's do our deep breathing. Nice deep breath in. Big smile. I just got an inversion table, so I've been using that. So I feel more stretched out. Okay, good job. Relax your shoulders and your neck when you let it out. Okay, one more. And always a big smile. Great job, everybody. All right, so tomorrow we will see you back, Brunch with Brian, and we're going to follow through on this great Landlord Week and give you guys even more great information tomorrow. So until then, keep expecting success, getting awesome training, and taking action.